22nd, 2017, and we'll have roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wales.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Pelosi.
Here.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Here.
Councilmember Wagner.
Okay, let's, under announcements, reports, and presentations, tonight we have the Junior Council report on youth homelessness, and then at our next study session, we will have the one that they're preparing on roads. And so, Sydney, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started on Junior Council's perspective on youth homelessness.
Okay, so we have a presentation for you. We found 3 basic issues that we're facing, which include the basic necessities, knowing how to ask for help, and education, and we will each be sharing one of those. John has basic necessities.
Oftentimes when we think of basic necessities, one of the things that come to mind is food and water. And while this is true, shelter, medicine, and hygiene are some other necessities that sometimes get overlooked. And although homeless youth are able to receive food through the homeless food bank or free lunches, oftentimes these foods are not nutritious enough or filling enough to sustain them, especially in the years of growth. Not having a proper place to sleep could lead to improper hygiene, and failure to take a shower could lead to lack of health, and this could have many consequences as well. For example, it could lead them to getting bullied by their peers, or even leading them to having a hard time finding a job in which they would be able to get back on their feet. In addition, having bad sleep conditions, whether in extreme cold or wet conditions, could lead them to having health issues, and having no or little access to proper health care and medicine would only lead them into deeper problems. And as a teenager myself, I know how important it is to have a balanced, nutritious diet and to take proper care of myself in order to stay healthy and function well, both academically and socially. Homeless youth in the same way need these basic necessities as well.
And
so knowing how to ask for help, when trying to understand shelter requirements, some of the kids don't live with their parents or any relatives, and live with their relatives, or don't even live in a house at all and live on the streets. And some of the homeless shelters don't even take the kids, they just take the adults, and the kids have to stay somewhere else. And in transportation, some of the kids that need a ride don't know how to ask for it, or too shy, and they're sometimes embarrassed to ask because they might get bullied about it. And documentation necessary for school enrollment, some kids don't have it because it might have been burned in a fire, or may have gotten lost in the process of moving.
And we also see a lot of problems with the students' education. A lot of times there's a hard time getting school supplies needed, pencils, crayons, that kind of thing for the younger students. And if these students don't have the supplies that they need, then a lot of times they choose not to participate at all, which leads to more and more consequences down the road, a bad education, not being able to get into college, dropping out of high school, and those all lead to not being able to get a job, and it just spirals and spirals out of control. And a lot of times students don't have the money for extracurriculars, and a lot of studies have shown that extracurriculars such as art and sports lead to more success in school. And so if the students can't afford these needs, then they're going to be doing worse in school and in life in general. And those were our main issues that we found in regards to youth homelessness.
Any questions for our panel? Councilmember Pelosi.
What is your first name? I can't read that.
Matthew.
Matthew. Okay, Matthew, you mentioned bullying. Can you tell us what type of bullying that you guys have seen around school?
I've seen kids getting bullied because, like their hairstyle, or maybe because they don't have enough to pay for something, or even their shoes.
No, but what type of reactions are those that don't have the proper supplies? What kind of reactions are they getting from students? You said bullying, but what do you mean by bullying, I guess?
Like they get made fun of.
Make fun of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Matthew.
And I think what I'm seeing in the schools is they're shunned a little bit. If this kid always seems to be without this or without that, they kind of shun them a little bit. It's hard for them to be inclusive and feel like they're part of everything when people kind of stay away from them. Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Well, since you students are on the youth council, how do you direct those students that are being bullied or go without? Do you approach them and direct them in areas where they can get help?
I know I haven't seen a lot of this at Riverside because they try to make it a really inclusive, like family-oriented school. But in other places, I know that people have pointed them towards like shelters and stuff like that. When we were in DC, we went to the youth homeless meeting, and they said that a lot of times they were pointed towards shelters, but then once they got there, they couldn't, like they weren't accepted into the shelter because like they didn't have proper identification, or if they were a single mother, they would take the mom but they wouldn't take the child, and so they had to separate and that kind of thing. And so even like people that are going and trying to get help, it's not necessarily always given to them.
So,
Councilmember Trout
if
Manuel.
you're locally, are you aware of the different organizations that we have for youth?
I know students can go to their counselors and their counselors can help them, but I don't know of any specific organizations that they can go to.
Okay. You can turn around and look at one of them who is right there, but depending on the age group. Okay.
Any other questions? Well, next study session, we're going to hear some ideas about our roads. And we will keep preparing little focus issues so that you can hear what our perspective is. I know the roads group has got some ideas on some projects that we can do. Listening to you this evening makes me think that maybe what we ought to spend a session of our time on is coming up with a listing of where you can get help, like who do you go to get the free and reduced lunch, who do you go to get the school supplies, and this would be a helpful tool for our counselors too. If we could have a counselor come in and work with us, because we've got Auburn Communities and Schools, we've got the lunch program, we've got counselors, we've got some others, but it might be nice to have a nice listing of it. Okay. So since there's no more questions, thank you. Go home and study.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and the excellent presentation.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for being so patient. It's time for Nexus presentation on youth homelessness, and you have 15 minutes.
I probably won't need 15 minutes.
And hopefully we have all your stuff geared up for you.
We've got something there. I don't know if I'm going to need it, though. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak. My name is Michael Jackson. I'm with Nexus Youth and Families. Been there for almost 3 years now. July 14th. This is going to be my 3rd year here in Auburn, and looking forward to what the future brings. I'm really excited to follow these kids. In their presentation, they say in show business, never follow a kids act. And That's where you put me. I thought I was going to go first. I will make some comments based on their presentation. I think that's going to serve us better than me going entirely down a different route. The first young man spoke about basic necessities, the need, and I spoke to him before we started this whole presentation. He talked about the need for food, shelter, sleep. He made a specific point to me that although kids can find food, it's not always the most nutritious food. It's junk food. He didn't call it junk food, but you and I call it junk food. And that's one of those true things. When you're hungry, when you're homeless, you're probably going to eat whatever they're giving you. You're not going to be very particular. You're going to eat just to get full. So nutritious food is something that homeless youth, young adults lack. The access to those kind of foods that can nourish the body and carry you around for the rest of the day, because you're probably going to be on the street 90% of the time. You get to go into a shelter, a homeless shelter. You get to go into a shelter at night. During the day, you've got to be out on the streets. I don't know what people do out on the street all day long, but they're not, you can't be that productive when you're hungry. You can't be looking for a job when you're hungry. One of the things that I'm starting to see is that a lot of us are glossing over the homeless issue. We see homeless people, we see homeless kids, and we say to ourselves, that's too bad. The last couple of weeks, Boeing employees have been coming to our campus, Nexus's campus, to do some tours to see if they're going to grant us some money so that we can buy some things. And they come into the shelter, and I take them into the shelter. We've got that 12-bed shelter. I take them into the shelter, and they come out, and they're feeling pretty good about what we're doing there. We feel pretty good about what we're doing there. But then when you stop and you look and you think about what it is we just exited, the building we just left, what is that? It's a shelter. It's a 12-bed shelter. And the beds are mats. They're laying on the floor on a blue mat, and they might have some covers over them and a pillow. That's what we're giving them. We're covering them up. We're keeping them from the elements. We're keeping them a little bit safe, but we're not doing them any favors. What we have to start doing is being productive with these people. We have to give them those educational opportunities. We have to give them those job opportunities. We have to give them something that gives them hope. We are not providing those things that you most need, and that's hope. We're doing the best we can with what little we do have, but hope is something that just cannot be bought. It's something that you have to feel from the inside, and that comes from the care that you're getting. I did something, and I was telling Dane, I did something this weekend that probably shook me to my core. Federal Way Coalition Against Trafficking had their fundraiser this past weekend. And I went up there, they asked me to come and speak about trafficking. I don't know anything about trafficking. I know that it's wrong. I know it's slavery. I know people suffer from it. I also know that your first day as a kid, that you're going to be homeless, within 24 hours, you're going to be solicited for prostitution. And you're probably going to take them up on it because you want that safety. You want that person who says, come here, I'm going to be your caretaker. I'm the guy who's going to take you and put you in a hotel overnight. I'm the guy who's going to take you to my home, and I'm going to let you do things there and get you some food and get you that stability that you're looking for. But he will never tell you that I'm the guy who's going to prostitute you later. I'm the guy who's going to send you to Taiwan. And this young lady that I spoke with told me that's exactly what happened to her. She was abused as a child, so she left home about 12 years old. She was abused from the time she was 8 until 12 years old when she finally decided to leave. And when she finally left the house, she was in prostitution for 22 years. And that's a shame. We see homeless kids. We see homeless young adults. We don't see the harm that's been caused to them. We don't see the issues that they're dealing with. We see them being lazy in the park. We see them being lazy in the library. But we don't understand the hurt that these people have undergone. I've always told people, imagine what it feels like to tell yourself and to believe that it's safer to be out in these streets than to be in that house, whatever house that is. That's what these kids deal with on a daily basis. Thankfully, I'm in Auburn, working for Nexus Youth and Families, and the city supports us, and we're very appreciative of that. Other people are starting to cut funding because numbers are down. Numbers are down because the shelters aren't full. Our job shouldn't be to shelter kids. It should be to get kids on their own, to get them stable. I hate that kids have to come to shelter. I'd much rather them go home and have a secure life. I'd much rather them grow up like my children did, like your children have. I don't want to be in the shelter business. I don't want to have to fight for funding because our numbers are down. If our numbers are down, where the hell are those kids then? Have they gone home? Are they safe? Or did they just go down the road? They wouldn't hide someplace. Councilmember Pelosi, you asked the kids about bullying. Bullying is something that it doesn't have to necessarily be physical, the punching and all that stuff. It's the gossip about you. It tears at your fabric of what you are. It belittles you because you don't have the right kind of shoes, because your clothes stink, you stink, you haven't had a bath, and you go to school and you try to learn that way. It's tough to live on the streets. Every kid wants to be liked. Every kid wants to be part of that team that gets picked. And the homeless kid will never feel that. He'll never understand that joy unless we decide that we're going to make a difference. Unless we decide that enough is enough, that we have enough, that we can share now. And we can come out there and we can start delivering hope for these children, for these human beings. I learn a lesson every day that I go to work. And I find that it hurts going to work every day. But I know that if I don't show up, these kids have no chance. School supplies. When you're homeless, you don't really care about school supplies. You're thinking, I'm glad to be indoors right now. And I'm embarrassed to be indoors because they might know I'm homeless. You saw Chris Little when he spoke at our breakfast, and he talked about going to the bathrooms in the park, washing his face and hands, washing his hair, and then mixing in with the kids as they walked through the park because he didn't want anyone to know he was homeless. That's the shame that these people live with on a daily basis. And kids don't know enough to be mean. Well, they know just enough to be mean, I guess. But they don't really understand what they're doing to someone who's homeless. The ones who are affected are the homeless and those of us who know better. I've gone to a couple of meetings lately with the Indigenous Institute, and they're working on a program to help the Native Americans deal with a suicide epidemic. They are the smallest population in probably the world, but they have one of the highest suicide rates. And there's a lady, and I wish I could remember her name, who said to the Institute that sports is a suicide stopper because you start to feel good about yourself, because you're competitive. You're doing those things that you get the endorphins going, you get that high, that natural high that comes with competition. And that might be true. Maybe that's what we need to do, is get these homeless kids more active. Give them that hope. Give them a hope that there is a better tomorrow. Give them a hope that we're going to find them a home. We're going to find them transitional housing. And finding a home doesn't mean a single unit. It means that these kids, because it's getting impossible to do this anymore, it means that they get to learn how to live in society. They get to learn how to live as roommates. They get to learn how to live a life that's shelter-free. I really do appreciate you giving me this opportunity, and I appreciate your support of our agency. And with that teamwork, we can make a difference, and we will make a difference. But we have to always remember, we have to bring the hope to these kids, and we have to be willing to give it to them. Thank you.